All right, this is exactly why your sales script is actually just a superstition. I think before I dive into what that actually means, I want to talk about like conventional misconceptions or what most people think needs to be included in a successful sales call. Rich and I just did a podcast, was it like last week maybe, about what we call like the kitchen sink approach. And that's about like the belief where every time you have a sales call, you need to go through all of this shit, right? So if you're familiar with, I make fun of this a lot on Twitter, like the NEPQ questions. I asked ChatGPT to tell me what NEPQ questions are, and I swear to God, too, people. I had this week was at least like 2 people just send me scripts for offers that they're going to get on, and I would read through it, and a lot of them have most of this type of stuff. Again, it's the belief that you need to take a prospect 0 to 100 with every possible different emotion, every type of question to trigger that emotion in them in order to make a sale. And if they don't do that, they're not going to make a sale. So bear with me here. Feel free to fast forward for the next 15 seconds. You need your connection questions, of course, if you want to close deals, your situation questions, your problem awareness questions, your solution awareness questions, your consequence questions, obviously your consequence questions, implication questions, your solution-based questions, your transition questions, your validation questions, your commitment questions, because of course, man, they need to commit, your clarifying questions so you can actually know what they're saying, your leading questions, your emotional connection questions, and of course, your commitment consistency questions, whatever the fuck that means, rational distance questions, absolutely no idea what that means, your discovery questions, fairly basic one there, urgency questions, cost of inaction questions, your gap questions, and your closing questions. That's what needs to go into a successful sale. Because if you don't do all this, you better believe the offer owner that you sell for, or your sales manager, or a big sales guru is going to tell you that, oh, you didn't dig deep enough. You didn't ask your rational dissonance questions. That's why they didn't close, right? Imagine too, getting on a call, being like, oh, I'm kind of interested in this. Like, I kind of feel like I need this right now for my business or my life, whatever it is. And you get on a call and some guy is trying to run you through all these questions before he even tells you what the offer is. And of course, he's not going to tell you what the price is. You're on a free strategy session. You're trying to strategize with him. He's not telling the price until he goes through all this with you, right? That's what I see a lot of in this space, which is very unfortunate. But the biggest reason why I think this is complete nonsense is that most of the time when people go through all this, they just proceed to read the rest of their script, which is pitch a course, you pitch a community, and you pitch a live call. Or you pitch them the same 3 steps you tell someone of how you're going to get them 15 leads per month, or they don't pay. It's the same exact thing every time. And if your entire script just becomes forcing that emotion, forcing all these questions on a prospect, all you're doing is checking mental boxes of what you think a sale should include. The discovery literally just becomes superstition for a sale because you believe you need to do all of that in order to get a sale. And I'm gonna talk about in a second, like how that exactly relates to the definition of superstition. But to me, the way I look at this, as we talked about in the podcast, is the question for me is, did the answers to their questions change anything that you did? And if you didn't ask them a single question, would you have pitched them any differently? And if you didn't ask them any questions, would they still have bought? Those are 3 very important questions to ask yourself and to be very real with yourself. If all of this is necessary or it's just fluff, and for some reason you believe you need to do that, right? Again, like to this first point is a lot of times I'll like straight up ask the closers too, like, okay, so you sent me a script with this question and you read that question, you just said it kind of out of the blue in the middle of a call. Why did you ask that? They're like, I don't know, it's in the script. Okay, so did their answer change anything you did, thought of, or said? And they're like, no. So why are you doing that? Why are you asking them that question? Right? Same thing too. If it makes no difference, you don't need to ask the question. It's an irrelevant question if it changes nothing. And if you didn't ask them questions, would they still buy? Because I know what people are thinking, right? They're like, dude, you're an idiot. I ask all these questions all the time. I build the value. I ask my NEPQ. I create the gap. I talk about, cost of inaction. I talk about commitment consistency questions. I always got to hit those. And I still close at, 30%. Okay, great. If you didn't do any of that, would you still close at 30%? Ask yourself that. right? And this is actually a really good thing too. I had this I used to work at a corporate sales job for a little bit, and my boss said something to me that was very interesting. And I apply this to sales a lot. He said that when he's interviewing people, he would, like, for a job, he would ask them in the middle of it, like, "Are you left-handed or right-handed?" And they'd be like, I'm right-handed." Right. Like, oh, okay, cool. And just like move on from it. He thought it was like interesting to see how people responded to it. And obviously it made no difference if they're left-handed or if they're right-handed, but it was just interesting to see how they respond to it. And so I apply it to this case, because if I just threw it, like, let me do this, right? Let me do this. I'll do 21, left-handed or right-handed. That's a question you need to ask. So if you ask that question in all these sales calls and they said I'm left-handed, and then you close them, are you going to be like, yo, new discovery question just dropped? You ask them if they're left-handed or right-handed, they close every single time. No, it has absolutely no difference on the sale. And you putting that in the sales script is just complete mental weakness. And you believe somehow that you need to ask that every single time now in order to close a deal. It is an irrelevant question that changes absolutely nothing. So let's talk about why this is a problem. I'm going to say something crazy here. The elephant in the room in sales and business is that you are selling an offer to a market. So what does that mean? That means if they like it and they believe they'll get more value than the price they pay for it, there's a good chance they'll probably buy it. However, if they don't like it and they do not believe that they'll get more value than the price they pay for it, they're probably not going to buy it. Right? Again, you're selling an offer to a market. Does the market even want the offer? Do they like the offer? Do they find it valuable for the price you're charging it? Those are very important questions from a business standpoint that you need to ask before you start grilling your sales rep about their tonality. That's very important. Choosing to ignore that reality and attribute lost deals to the lack of hypothetical emotional scenarios that I talked about earlier is completely idiotic, and it does not benefit your business in absolutely any single way possible, right? Because again, you are selling an offer to a market. And so a lot of times, the real reason people didn't buy is probably because they were just not sold on the offer that you're selling them. I know you're thinking, oh, well, that's a sales rep's job. Sure. But again, if the feedback you give them is you didn't go deep enough in discovery, you didn't handle their objections, it's like you're really not connecting the dots in a way that is actually advantageous to anyone considering purchasing from you. Right? What if the guy just didn't buy because they didn't understand the offer enough? And let's talk about that for a second. A lot of, again, things like Rich and I will talk about in the podcast or the group or on Twitter or whatever, is that the idea of like a free strategy session. The way so many funnels work is they pique vague intrigue. They book them on a free strategy session. There's like no information out there. They certainly don't tell the price. And so they make people get on the call who are like, yeah, I just want to know what you do. I just want to learn more. And they make the prospect sit through like 20, 30 minutes of this garbage. And then they pitch a course, a community, a live call. Okay, great. That's 12 grand. And they handle their objections. A lot of times people are just not like informed enough or sold enough on what you are actually selling to purchase from you. And this is a really big one too, right? So I've actually recently been selling, we've been managing a couple like software companies. And so I've, funnily enough, I've listened to a lot of sales calls from competitors. I've actually sold some a little bit for competitors, long story, but some are better than others. Maybe your offer didn't contain features that your prospect wanted. And the way that this shows itself on calls is we'll simply do this. Hey, does this come with X? So on one offer, I'm going to say, no, it doesn't. And then that's going to manifest later in a let me think about it objection, because it didn't have the feature that they wanted. So it's like not the offer that they really wanted because it doesn't come with this one thing. And then I'm like, all right, cool. It's like 10 grand, whatever. Like, let me think about it. It's not because of my tonality. It's not because of my objection handling. It's not because my cognitive dissonance questionnaire, the fuck that thing said. It's just because it really wasn't what they wanted. But if I'm on another offer, it's on relatively the same thing, but it does come with that feature. Prospect goes, hey, does that come with X? And I'm like, of course it does. And then when I ask for the sale, I get it because it was exactly what they wanted. Again, misdiagnosing that for the first time, the first scenario that I said is like, oh, you didn't go deep enough on discovery. You could have went as deep as you wanted. They weren't going to buy because your offer did not contain the feature that they wanted, and that's why they did not purchase. And so again, choosing to ignore that reality and attribute lost deals to lack of hypothetical emotional scenarios is completely idiotic. Maybe they didn't buy because there's no social proof or guarantee. I'll give you another example too. We actually just launched an offer a couple months ago. It did like 700K in the first month. It's pretty crazy, but there wasn't much social proof. People still bought it because the offer was so good. But like the way people are wired, you're going to get some people who are like, honestly, I like this a lot. It's good. I don't want to be a guinea pig. There's just not enough proof for me to drop this amount of money. So like, let's hold off for now. But like, it's not a no. It's just like, I just want to see some more proof before I invest my money. It's valid. I can kind of push, you can kind of reframe things, maybe you can say, oh, the price is going to be double or triple by then. But like people have money, what we're selling them. They just want to know that they're not getting ripped off, right? It is what it is. And so if you're selling an offer that has no social proof, it has no guarantee, some people are just simply not going to buy because those things are not in place. Doesn't matter how you handle their objections. Doesn't matter if you have upward inflection at the end of your sentences. Those things are important. Maybe they didn't buy because the price is out of their budget. Those things happen, right? I actually, it's funny. I was talking to my brother earlier, and he has a business as well. He was thinking about joining a program, and he was like, some of these are just like crazy expensive now. I think I want to just spend like a couple grand. Like I'd be willing to do it if it made sense. But if they get on the call and charge me like $6,000, I'm not going to do it. Like it's not really worth it. It's more of a want. It's not a need. So I have a budget in mind of what I want to invest. He said he got on the call. He said it was $2,000. He paid instantly, right? It was aligned with his budget. He liked it. He wanted it. If that guy said it was $8,000, he's like, dude, I'm not doing this, right? It's just not that important to him. It is what it is. Didn't matter what type of emotional connection questions that the sales rep had on that call. He wasn't buying it. Yes, I'm wearing a different shirt and I got a haircut. I was editing this video and I realized that I didn't yell about one of the most important aspects of this entire video. Maybe they didn't buy because the price is out of their budget. And so I'm talking to a very specific type of person when I bring this up. And maybe you can relate to this, or maybe you can sympathize with this person, because I know I do, because I know I've been there before. This is someone who's selling a biz op, they're selling a course, they're selling a coaching program, and it's to make money online. And so who buys things to make money online? People who typically don't have a lot of money. And so you're selling something, we'll call it $7,000. And the person that you're selling it to wants to make money online because they don't have any money. And so we'll put like a situation to this person. Maybe they work at Wendy's part-time. Maybe they're in school. Maybe they're just kind of lost in life. They don't know what they're doing. They're not making much money. They have $1,500 in the bank. They work maybe part-time, maybe full-time, and you're pitching them something that has a price tag of $7,000 on it. It might take them years, which is unfortunate, to save up $7,000 to purchase your program. And that's what it's unfortunate. Like I talked about earlier, kind of making like puzzle pieces fit. You're selling an offer to a market. If you sell an offer that's $7,000 to a market, people that don't have any money, or at least the individual on the call, it's going to be tough, and I've seen this absolutely time and time again. This is something I struggle with too. I've sold biz ops before, like whenever I first got started, and your sales manager, the offer owner's breathing down your neck. They're like, you got to be closing 25%, got to be closing 25%. When the people on the calls don't have any money and they legitimately cannot afford what you are selling them, to the point where not only they don't have that enough money to their name, but it would take them months, if not years, to save up the amount of money to purchase your program. It's a lot of times too, like if you're selling something to someone like brand new to the space and you say it's $7,000, that might be like conceptually more money than they've actually understood. Like they've never seen that amount of money before. Again, it's kind of unfortunate, but like that's the reality of people who sell like a lot of biz ops, especially if there's no like qualification, pre-call, anything like that. Like you might get a calendar flooded of people like that. And then you're beating yourself up about it. You're not closing them. What did I do? Your offer owner reviews it. They're like, you didn't go deep enough in discovery. You didn't create the gap. You didn't build the value. And you didn't handle their objections. I've seen that time and time again. And I experienced that. I'll tell you a story. I remember whenever I sold the biz op again, it was a couple years ago now. And this was like the most just biz op in the world. Like there's no price. Like people don't know the price getting onto the call. This guy had like maybe like 2 or 3 YouTube videos with like 100 views each. It was all cold traffic. No one's ever heard of him. I'm selling them this coaching program, not even a coaching program. It was a course community and like 1 live call a week, basically a course. It was like $4,000 to people who didn't have any money. Like nowhere in the VSL at all was there any qualifying question. There was one thing they said. It said, you need at least a couple $100s. That's all it said. You need at least a couple $100s. When I'm selling them something that's like $4,000, there's a big disconnect there, right? And I still remember this. The guy who ran the offer was like going through the applications on a team call. And he was like reading through it. We had a question. It was like, how much money do you have saved up to start your business? And no, it's not like the most accurate representation in the world, but it's still a decent indicator, I'd say, for the most part, especially if you're speaking to beginners. And we had a question that was like how much money to make on a monthly basis. Every single person, how much money to make on a monthly basis? 2K, maybe 3K. How much money do you have saved up to start your business? $500, $1,000, $0. That's what people put. And I still remember this because one person put that they had $2,000 saved up, ready to start their business. And he circled it. He was like, there's no reason this person shouldn't close. In his mind, that was like the most qualified lead. I need to build the value. I need to create the gap. I need to ask my validation questions. I have to ask my transition questions, my solution-based questions. And then if I ask my cost of inaction questions, and then my scarcity and urgency questions, and then, of course, hammer in my closing questions, I should close that deal 100% of the time, if not skill issue. I don't even know where I was. There we go. I was selling something that was $4,000. This person had $2,000 to their name. That's kind of insane. And we're talking about handling objections is the reason people don't buy those things. I get that from, a sales rep standpoint. Yeah, you can handle the objections. You can, you can have a good discovery. You could really resonate with this person. You could talk about what happens if nothing changes and they really, really want to do it. And you can. I've done this before. Like you can close those people for like down payments and deposits and like a payment plan that's like really customizable to them. But you're lying to yourself if you don't realize that 99.99% of the time those people are going to churn and you're taking a pretty significant amount of their money. And for some reason, this is like a normal thing in like selling courses, coaching programs, biz ops. Is like it's like chill to take people's last dollar, which you can do that if you want. Like you're a sales rep, by all means, go for it. You could think this is like, oh no, you just have to, if they really wanted it, they'd find the money. Sure, man, you can go ahead and do that. But the reality of the situation is, dude, if you're selling something, like I said earlier, like $7,000 and someone has $1,500 in their bank account, doesn't matter how much you handle objections, whatever cost of inaction questions or whatever any PQ shit you try before that, like you are selling something that's very expensive to someone who does not have money. Yeah, you can close a lot of those people. Everyone has, but it's a pretty valid reason not to buy it if it's 5 times the amount of money that their entire net worth is. So I'll leave it there. Back to the original video. Maybe they didn't buy because they didn't think they would receive more value than the price you asked for. This is something too. It's like so many people after reading like the Hormozi book, the no-brainer offer, just getting this habit of like, raise your price, raise your price, raise your price. Cool, bro. At a certain point, you just charge too much and people just don't think it's that valuable. Like that's the reality of the situation. One thing too, maybe they're getting cheaper quotes from competitors that include features that they want. Earlier where I mentioned, it's like someone gets on a call with you, like, does it come with X? You're like, no, it doesn't. You got to let me think about an objection. If they get on a call with a competitor, they say, hey, does it come with X? They say yes. Oh, hey, and that's also cheaper than the price that you quoted them for. So it has exactly what they want and it's cheaper. They're probably going to go with that offer because, again, they're selling an offer into a market. The market wants this offer instead of yours. That's important to understand of why people don't buy from you. But to my point, I see this time and time again, is you have this conventional sales manager, and I know plenty of businesses that have people like this, and I hear it from their sales reps. I hear this every single day. They'll review the call and they'll go, hey, you didn't create the gap enough. You didn't go deep enough in discovery, right? And you didn't handle their objections properly. Let's do objection handling training. Complete nonsense. This is something, it's a UK saying, but I like it now. It's missing the forest for the trees, as they say. It's like you miss the broader picture. You miss what's going on and you're focusing on minor details that have nothing to do with the actual outcome. But let's talk about what this has to do with superstitions. So I played sports my entire life. I'm sure a lot of people have. I played like baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever growing up. I played hockey my entire life, high school, college. I basically played very competitively until I was 22. I still play to some degree. And I think that anyone who's played sports a lot of their life, they've met people, maybe they are those people who are extremely superstitious, meaning they have 100-step pregame routine. They got to be up at this time. They got to be in the gym at this time. They got to go for a walk at this time. They wear their favorite shirt. They eat a PB&J at 2 p.m. They get to the rink at this time. They tape their stick in this exact seat. They do this. They listen to this song and this song and this song. And they go out there and they play like shit. They suck. They're not good, right? It had nothing to do with the fact that, they ate their pregame PB&J at 4:04 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. It didn't matter. They're not good. Didn't matter what they did. They could have done 100 more things. They could have not done any of that stuff. It did not affect the game that they played. And so this is the connection that I'm making, right? In my opinion, this is no different than a sales manager or a business owner reviewing a sales call and saying, he didn't buy because you didn't create enough cost of an action or didn't widen the gap enough. You didn't go deep enough when the offer just did not resonate with the prospect that you were selling to. The real reason they didn't buy is because the offer wasn't good. And so this is all I'm really trying to say is if the routines you have to do have no effect on the outcome of the event, but you have convinced yourself that it has become a superstition. You have convinced yourself that all of this shit is necessary for you to close a deal. Much like this person has convinced themselves they need to do 100 different things at specific times or they're not going to play a good game. When in reality, they're just not good at hockey. And when in reality, they just don't sell a good offer. So now let's talk about the inverse of this. Let's say the person actually did close, right? Like the scenarios I was saying earlier is people didn't buy. What if they actually did buy, right? What if that discovery had no effect on the sale at all and people just came to the call pre-sold, they were a lay down deal and they bought it, right? To my point earlier of like asking if they're left-handed or right-handed, they could say left-handed and they close. It's not because you asked them if they're left-handed or right-handed. It's because the offer resonated with the person that you're selling to. Yet a lot of people have themselves convinced it's because this like 21-year-old closer had like this profound experience with this prospect that the cost of an action questions, the scarcity and the urgency made them pull out the credit card when they otherwise didn't think that they would. Does it happen sometimes? Sure. Is it the vast majority? I don't think so. Because the reason they probably bought was just that it was the offer, it was exactly what he wanted. It was at the exact time he needed it. It was at a price that was within his budget. And they probably just sat through all of your emotional connection questions because they're a nice guy. Now, that's not to say that you can't have an effect on the sale. Of course, I'm going to cover exactly like the framework that we use to have a very efficient discovery. All I'm saying is that if you're relying on all this random shit to close all your deals, I think it has very little to do with the outcome of the sale. And again, it creates a superstition for yourself because it's kind of the same thing too. Like we use like the hockey example again. So like this guy's like, he hasn't scored in 5 games, right? But he's like skating by the net, the defenseman shoots it, hits off his skate and goes in. Was it because he had his PB&J at 4:04 p.m. instead of 4 p.m.? No, it was because he was in the right place at the right time, and those things happen sometimes, right? Much like you ask a guy if you're left-handed or right-handed, it has no difference on the outcome of the sale. I hope you understand the point now. I try to make that. So let's talk about the closed and paid approach. This is what we do for clients that we work with in teams that we manage. The way we look at it is let's strip all of that away and start with the bare minimum that's required to close deals at a high velocity. That is a good offer that your market wants to buy. If you have that in place, it really doesn't matter what you're saying here. You're selling an offer to a market that wants to buy. So ideally, not going to happen every time. This is ideal, is that your offer should be so well positioned in the market that once people can conceptually understand it, a lot of them are going to be sold on it to some degree. So at this point, really the challenge just becomes making sure the market actually understands the offer. Right? So the way we do this is to position the offer and just have a very simple, compelling sales argument for why what we do works with a high degree of industry insight, social proof, and a guarantee that actually backs that up if possible. If you get that right, you should be able to, again, kind of hypothetical, but also kind of not, because I'm going to give an example here, this in a second, be able to ask them 0 questions and simply just present an offer, tie off some loose ends with some questions, and then probably get a handful of laydowns based purely on the quality of the offer and its resonance in the market. And then you can add on questions on top of this to be able to better understand how to like kind of position different pillars of your offer and explain things in different ways, given the prospect's degree of sophistication, experience, and desires, right? And like what they're looking for, like the features that I mentioned earlier. And so the way in which you do that is to build a discovery based purely around what you sell. And again, I'll get into this here in a second. So in my opinion, like the gap people talk about isn't about forcing an emotional sell on people. It's about creating a gap by identifying the inefficiencies of their current situation versus the implementation of our system in which their desired end state is inevitable. I'll say that again. I thought about a couple different ways of explaining this, and I kind of like the way this came out. So it is creating the gap by identifying the inefficiencies of their current situation versus the implementation of our system in which their desired end state is inevitable. And so all we're trying to do with like the sales strategy, the sales approach, is to make them realize this in the most efficient way possible. And so let me give you an example. This is kind of an extreme example, but you'll get the point, right? In terms of like the bare minimum approach. So right now we have a couple different offers. They're more in like the investment niche. So it's like very simply boiled down. Hey, you give us X money and then you'll get Y money in return. So the only questions I really ask are just to gauge the sophistication level so I can understand the terminology to use. So I'm like, hey, have you spoken to other companies and you're familiar with how this works? Are you brand new to the space, trying to figure out how it all works? I have my setters do that in that other question or the other video that I posted last week. Literally, this is just me asking, hey, can I explain this to you at like a 5th grade reading level? Or can I use terminology that you'll understand? That's literally what I'm trying to do. And then I present my offer like in a way that resonates with that demographic. That's an extreme example of one question in a pitch, and people pay us, sometimes $10 to $20, now $30,000 on the calls. So we can still extrapolate that across the board. And so this is an example I like to use because this is like an offer in the real estate niche that I worked on. It's like a year ago now. I only took like maybe a handful of calls, like the lead gen wasn't there. But the reason I like this as an example is because before this, I had really no industry knowledge and I had no offer knowledge. It was a brand new offer in a brand new industry. And I was tasked with creating a sales script for it, which is kind of a difficult thing to do if you don't really know the offer that you're selling and the industry that you're selling to. And so what I wanted to do was to understand first, well, okay, why do people buy this? What problems are they struggling with that our offer becomes a solution to? So what are the selling points? Number 1, automated, cost-effective data sources. 2, fully trained English-speaking cold callers at an arbitraged wage. 3, CRM and automations. So once you understand your selling points, you can use that to understand how to best position and sell your product. So once you understand that, the question becomes, well, what questions should you ask? So the answers would help you best understand how to position and sell your product. Now, every question you ask affects the way you pitch, and that widens the gap of where they are versus where they would be if they worked with me. And so let's kind of walk through this. Number 1, automated, cost-effective data sources. The questions simply become, okay, well, where to get your data from? And I understand more and more about this niche. So I understand the answers that they'd give me, and they'll explain how it's more expensive. They're like, oh, I get it from XYZ place. Oh, okay, cool. Well, how much you spend? And they say a number. I say, oh, wow. Okay, cool. You scrape that yourself. Yeah. Okay, great. How much time does it take to do that? Okay, it takes a lot of time. And they spend a lot of money doing that. Okay. A lot of alternatives too is like where they get their data from. So it was in real estate. Sometimes people would literally drive around looking for properties, which takes a ton of time. And they would find like maybe 1 or 2, which is an insanely ineffective use of time. And so once I determine this, the way in which I sell my offer is, hey, this is how you scrape more data than you're currently getting for less money than you're paying. That's the sales argument, the angle in which I pitch. Let's go to number 2. Fully trained English-speaking cold callers at an arbitraged wage. So the questions I'd ask, do you do the cold calling yourself? And they say, sometimes they say yes. Okay, wow, how much time do you take? It doesn't matter what they say because I have different angles for each. A lot of times if they're like, oh, it takes me a ton of time. Okay, how many leads do you generate? Maybe it's a decent amount of leads, but it takes them a ton of time. So I'd say, oh, wow, it takes you what, like 15 hours a week? How do you still manage to grow the operations of your business if all of your time is spent cold calling? And they're like, yeah, that's what's tough. Okay, great. So that's the problem. And that's perfect because I'm going to show you how we can generate you more leads than you're currently getting with less of your time. Crazy. Or sometimes they have like a team doing it. They'd already have like a VA that already have a cold caller. They already have something. Or I could do something like this. So it's like, so some of them actually do have like a VA or a cold caller. So when I would ask, do you do the cold calling yourself? They would be like, no, I have a team. And say, okay, you have a team that does it for you. Yes. Where'd you get them? Actually, this is good. Where did you find them? It'd be like Fiverr or something, or like one of those sites we get VAs from the Philippines. And I'd be like, oh, where are the cold callers based? Oh, the Philippines. Oh, really? How are their accents? Honestly, not great. Oh, yeah, I know. Because what we notice is that a lot of these real estate deals are way too sophisticated to have people with huge accents making the cold calls. Yeah, we've noticed that too. The results haven't been great. And so you just like probe into understanding, okay, well, you get a decent amount of leads, like what's the conversion on them? People just hang up on them. Yeah, so like a lot of the leads just like aren't super qualified. Yeah, because the qualified people get mad that people with accents are calling them. And sometimes you'd be like, oh, do you train the team? I try to do it myself. Okay. How do you manage them? It takes a lot of time to manage them. Okay, so you're spending a lot of time managing a team that's not getting good results. Yes. Okay, cool. So this is how you generate more leads than you're currently getting with less of your time. And we actually say too, with English speaking VAs that you pay in arbitrage wage. So no matter like what I conclude from asking these questions, every single time I get to an answer where I can best position my offer as, well, it doesn't matter what scenario you're in, because I can promise you that we're going to generate you more leads than you're currently getting with less of your time with English speaking VAs that you pay a cheaper wage than you'd be paying anyone else in America. That's pretty cool. It's a pretty good offer. And I'm just understanding best ways to position that. Number 3, this is actually a really simple one. We gave them a CRM with automations. And so again, this is like a boomer industry. So I'd be like, do you guys have a CRM? A lot of times they'd be like, yeah, that's my CRM right here. I'm like, you just write them down in that notebook? They're like, yeah. Okay, cool. How do you know how to follow up with them? They're like, I really don't follow up with them. I'm like, okay, so you just write names in a notebook and then you don't follow up with them. They'd be like, yeah. Or sometimes they'd be like a Google sheet. I'm like, okay, well, how do you know when to follow up with them? They're like, we don't. Okay, cool. Did you know that we like a successful business? So I'd be like, okay, cool. So we've been doing this now to X amount of millions per year. We found that most of our deals came with about 4 months of follow-up. And they'd be like, wow, really? Yeah. Okay, so you're missing out on a metric shit ton of money by not having a CRM with automated sequences that will help you follow up with them. So I would position my offer. This is how you stay organized and generate more deals from your pipeline that you're not currently getting with your current system. And especially when we generate them a ton more leads, they're going to need a way to keep track of it. We help them do it. So we're getting them more leads with less time that they have to do less work for. And so all I'm doing with my discovery is understanding how to best position that. And then the price becomes a negligible amount of money to what they will clearly get from working with us. The reason why you ask these questions is because you think you need to ask these questions in order to make a sale. And if you make a sale, I would promise you it's only delaying the sale because you're spending so much time asking stupid questions like this. So I'm going to leave that there. If you want help doing this into your own offer, or creating a discovery process that isn't annoying and doesn't want to make you crawl out of your own skin, asking adults what would happen if nothing changed in 6 months, then you could shoot me a message or you could join Close and Paid and we'll help you do this. So I'll leave it there. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.